Yeah. Okay, so we are live. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jasmine, and I welcome you all to Global Interdisciplinary Summit. So earlier we had Dr. Cosmin Dima's session. Now we have another renowned speaker, and it's my pleasure to extend a cheerful welcome to Dr. Paul Feuerstein. Talking about him, Dr. Paul received his undergraduate training at SUNY Stony Brook during the 60s, studying chemistry, engineering, computer science, and music, and in 1972 graduate of University of NJ Medical and Dental. He maintains a general practice in Massachusetts. He installed one of the first in-office computers in 1978 and has been teaching and consulting since then. He is now the technology editor of Dentistry Today after 14 years with Dental Economics, author of several technology articles and lectures at many national and local dental meetings. His work with CAD/CAM helped develop the LAVA COS intraoral scanning system. He is the CDO of the Celadent Consulting Group. He was named Clinician of the Year at the 2010 Yankee Dental Congress and is an adjunct assistant professor in general dentistry at Tufts University. So today he'll be talking about dental technology 101 and a peak beyond. And I'm sure you guys will enjoy this session and learn something new. So before moving ahead, I would like you guys to visit the link in the description box. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everything that you're doing. And this is the first day I've gotten a shirt on since I started a couple of weeks ago. I just want to say hello to everybody. Hope everybody is safe. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And I just want to explain that I am not a world-class clinician. I am not a surgeon. I do not do bone grafts. I don't do implants. I am the teacher of the technology, the undercurrent of everything that everybody does. And I wasn't quite sure how to address this exceptional number of people on the screen in the world here, but I would like to go back to basics, because as the clinicians are speaking to you, they're telling you that I did a scan or I did a cone beam, but they forgot to tell you that it took them a while to figure out which scanner, which cone beam, which 3D printer, which mill to get. So we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to concentrate on the digital impression side. And let me start my slides. Give me 2 seconds, and I will give you a quick introduction to who I am, what I do, and why I'm here. It says share screen. I'm supposed to be technologically competent, and I believe I am. And so let's just do this. So the most important thing for you today is to take my email address right here. It's drpaul@tooththeory.com, because I have to speak very quickly. I'm going to show a lot of equipment and things like that, and you're going to have questions. So I'm going to have a question and answer later on anyway. But that's the best place to get me, is drpaul@tooththeory.com. And as I'll show you, I post things on Twitter and on Facebook, and I'll just get going. Let me introduce you to who I am, where I come from. So I live in Massachusetts, but I grew up in New York City in a little apartment building that looked like that. And as she said, I went to Stony Brook University undergraduate. My dental school was called New Jersey College of Dentistry. After I graduated, they changed the name to UMDNJ and sent me a second diploma. So I have 2 dental school diplomas. And a few years ago, Rutgers University took over the school and said, how would you like a 3rd diploma? And I said, no, 2 is plenty for what I do. My parents told me that I had to look clean for my yearbook picture. So that is the only known photograph of me with no beard. I trimmed my hair a little bit for the book there. And a couple of years ago, I was teaching in California, and a post came up on Facebook, and it said, here is Santa Claus speaking about digital radiography. I take myself somewhat seriously, and I have a lot of levity. And so when the American Dental Association decided to have their session in New Orleans on Halloween, I said, why can't I wear a costume? And they said, Paul, we can't stop you. So this is how I was teaching in New Orleans at the ADA conference. My friend said, Paul, where the heck is your costume? Because this is what I looked like when I went to the Newport Folk Festival many years before. And if you note, my hair was a little bit different. So this is my quest. Massachusetts, we get a lot of snow, although this year we did not. This is what you look like after a while when you snow blow for a bit. My city is called Lowell, Massachusetts, where the film The Fighter was taken. It was an Academy Award-winning film, and it was filmed in my neighborhood because the boxer named Mickey Ward was the star of the whole show. I also have a house in Maine, on the coast of Maine. It's in Bar Harbor, Maine. I don't live on the ocean. I can't afford that. But if you want to be a great photographer, if you go to Bar Harbor, Maine, in Acadia National Park, every photo looks like that. And internationally, you all know that Maine is famous for its lobsters. And this is a 3-pound lobster that you can pick up at a restaurant for under $20 sometimes. Usually they bring up the prices, but it's unbelievable. It's just fantastic. So while I'm speaking about lobsters, I couldn't help but tell you this story that in Bar Harbor, Maine, there was a woman who decided that it was very inhumane to take lobsters and throw them into hot boiling water. So she has a marijuana license. So she decided to blow marijuana smoke on the lobsters prior to them going into the water. And they became much sweeter and they were less tense when they went into the water. And that's been quite a story for Maine. So I was the technology editor of dental economics in the United States since 1999. And then I moved over to Dentistry Today a few years ago, where I'm the technology editor there. I have written a column every single month since 1999. So if you do the math, it's well over 200 articles written for many major journals. And I actually been on the cover twice. So I guess I'm a big shot in the US. But I'm a musician by trade. Prior to dental school, and you were always a musician. So I would rather have seen this happen. I would rather be on the front cover of Rolling Stone magazine with myself sitting there playing my 1978 Martin D28 Custom, which means something to some percentage of the people out there. And anyone wants to know about it, I could tell you more stories. So why am I here? I'm not a world-class clinician. I can't tell you anything about bone grafting, about crown lengthening. I actually can. I'm a general dentist, but I do sealants, I do fillings, I do crowns. It's regular general practice. But I do the work for you, every one of you, because this is where I go for play. Instead of playing golf, I go to every single dental meeting I can get my hands on. I teach at many of them. I spend my time running up and down the aisles, talking to the manufacturers, finding what's going on, what's the latest, what's the greatest, what's coming. And as you see in the corner there, the IDS show, which many of you have been to, is the playground. Unfortunately, as we're in this crisis right now, I'm stuck at home, and there are several meetings that have disappeared on me, and I'm not sure how the whole meeting situation is going to happen. I'm planning on being at the IDS show next year, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go along. And I put all the information when I'm at these shows in my Twitter feed or on my Facebook page, which I will give you at the end again if you missed it at the beginning. One of the nicest things that happens to me is I get to see people all over the world. I get to meet people. And in fact, I found out that I had a long lost brother who I never knew. We met each other. And this nice man named Richard is apparently related to me somehow. Not really, but we had a good time together. He's a wonderful man. I have to say, very, very, very approachable if you can get near him. But that's one of the perks I have, is meeting people such as Sir Richard Branson. So I'm going to be talking to you very quickly now about many, many products. And I do not work for any company. I do not get paid to put these slides up here. I sometimes do get paid by the companies if I'm doing a project for them. So sometimes a company will say, can you test out this new project? We have a beta test, and I'll get paid for those things, but I have nothing to do with sales or promotion of any product that we're talking about today. So again, if you tuned in a little bit late, the main thing is my email, drpaul@230.com, and that is the Facebook page is Paul Feuerstein, DMD Dental Technology, and with Twitter, which is a mirror at Dr. Paul F. So let's go right into impression scanners, digital impressions, and many of you use them, and many of you purchase them, but the reasons you purchase them are very different. So, and some of you don't have them. Some people who do not have these. So let's talk about this. When you go to the trade shows, you talk to the reps, they say, Doc, patients hate impressions. And you need a digital scanner. And you say, well, patients don't hate impressions. They actually hate going to the dentist for the most part. I mean, here you are, they hate the Novocaine, they hate the drill, they hate the sound, they hate the smell. And then you've worked with them for a half an hour and say, now I'm going to put this stuff in your mouth you have to bite on. So that's part of what they hate. And of course, you have patients who are gaggers, and so do I. And I have also some patients who don't. These are a couple of alginates I took last year, actually. I still use alginate. And I take these out of the patient's mouths and look at them, and I stare at them and they go, oh my God. And the patient goes, what's wrong? I go, oh, nothing. But I have a picture of the uvula over there. And I use blue wax, as you can see, blue periphery wax to prevent that from happening, but I get carried away. And if the patient's not blinking or gagging, I'm doing fine. A friend of mine teaches general anesthesia dentistry, sedation dentistry, and said, here's what one of my students did for us one day. Took an alginate of the throat and the uvula. The patient did survive. But so all patients don't hate impressions. But Doc, you're going to save money, and they're faster impressions. And they start telling you, since you take an impression, it costs maybe oh gosh, it costs like $20 to do a triple tray impression. A tray costs so much, impression material costs so much. So if you do 2,000 impressions at $25 a piece, you've saved quite a bit of money. But that's not the money change. That's not where the money comes in. The money comes into the actual process and the results that you get and the time you're saving and the agony that you save by using digital impression systems. And they are faster. The fastest impression material right now is from 3M. It takes about a minute and a half to set in the mouth, which is actually a little too fast sometimes. But if those of you who scan, and if those of you who have tried the newer scanners, you can scan a quadrant for a single or two crowns in probably 30 seconds, which means that if you do an upper and lower and a bite, you're looking at maybe a minute to a minute and a half to get that impression. And if the impression has a problem with it, if there's a void in the impression, with a regular impression, you have to take it again. And with a digital impression, you just go scan that area over if you want to. And what I do, and this is my advice to those of you who are still doing traditional impressions, and I do some, is always tell your patient you need to take 2 impressions. Just tell them that. I'm going to be taking 2 impressions. And you take the first impression out and you look at it. And if it needs to be retaken, you take the second impression. And if it looks fantastic, you say, guess what? We don't have to take the second impression, then you're a hero. So that's just one of the little things that goes on over there. You also, when you're taking an impression, you sit there and you're holding this in for a minute and a half or 2 minutes or whatever it takes, and you say a prayer. And the prayer is this: please, please, please make sure this comes out right. I want to make sure I don't have any voids. I want to make sure that it sets properly. I want to make sure the tray doesn't poke through, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you do have the digital impression, the prayer goes out the window. So that's just another reason to get the digital impression system. What about this? Studies say they're more accurate and you get more perfect margins and perfect contacts. Let's think about this workflow for a second. You have a regular impression. You pour stone, you have a stone model and the laboratory takes it. When you pour the stone, how many people actually sit there like you learned in dental school and dental materials and take 50 milliliters of water and 50 grams of water, of stone, and mix it at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time? You just dump it in, you mix it up and you put it together. So immediately, if something is off by a couple of microns here and there, you say, oh, a couple of microns? Yes, a couple of microns in our world is gigantic. So there's an innate discrepancy right there. And then the laboratory technicians are sitting there with a little piece of stone and they're pouring wax on it or pressing things on it, and little pieces of plastic chip away from their margins. So you get the case back and you run your Explorer and say, it's pretty good. It's not an open margin. I can feel the margin. When we were taught gold and we burnished the gold in, there was no margin whatsoever. And when you do digital impressions, and I'll show you the workflow, you don't feel that margin because it's dead on. There's no pieces of plastic chipping away. And again, when the technician is trying it on and off the model, little pieces of plastic flake away from the contacts. And again, the crown comes back from the laboratory. Patient goes, doc, it feels a little bit tight, and you sit there and you adjust it a little bit. That doesn't happen with digital impressions in the digital workflow. What about occlusion? We'll talk about that at the very end in detail. But basically, when you take a bite for a patient, if you use a triple tray, I'd say 80% of the time the patient is bit wrong. And you have to say to the lab, well, figure it out. Do it by hand. If you use a material in the mouth, the patient bites through the material and you really can't see what's going on. When you take a digital impression and a digital bite, the patient has nothing in their mouth. They close like this. And you can see if the teeth are in interdigitation where you want them in centric. And if they're not, you can go like this and hold their head together and scan buccally. So you will get a good centric contact. And this, I'm not saying that this is the most amazing thing, but it's a lot better. So when the crowns come back from the laboratory, you know the margins are good, you know the contacts are good, and the patient bites and they go, pretty good this way. When I grind aside, I can feel a little bump. So you take a little time and do the excursions, however you do it. And so your seating time is probably 10 minutes. There's where you're saving money. You're saving the aggravation. You know that you can get a constant result every single time, provided that you did a good preparation, provided that the laboratory knows what they're doing with the scans and knows how to mill things properly or print things properly. And then when I did a study many, many years ago for 3M, we found out that doctors who started using these systems had better preparations. And we thought about it and realized, of course, when you first got your first set of loops, 2x, 3x, 4x, microscopes, every time you increase the magnification, the preps got better. Because you see things on the screen. And on a digital impression, it's 40x, it's 20 to 40x. You see your margins this big. And you see they're going like this, and you go, oh my God, did I really do that? So you work a little bit harder to get those impressions proper. And there's also retraction issues that because of the new ceramics, we can keep our margins a little bit higher. We don't have to bury everything subgingival. In fact, people are saying go super gingival at this point with some of the new ceramics. And it's a lot easier for the computer to see it. So you have an easier time of making some of your preparations, provided the tooth allows you to do that. So that's been a very, very interesting sidebar. So I spoke to some people in Great Britain on Facebook, which I spend too much time on, and they did a little study and said the actual cost savings in the dental office is significant, that you don't have to pay for all sorts of things, plastic bags, impression trays, etc. And one of the things that's noted was no diesel. It says no petrol or diesel. When you take an impression, it has to get out of your office and get to a dental laboratory somehow, whether it's by mail, by FedEx, by something else, or by an automobile. So there's an issue there. What if the the product never gets to where it's supposed to go? What if it gets damaged in transit? What if the guy driving the car is in an accident? Something happens to your stuff. So one of the things with digital impression is you do the impression, you push a button, it says send, and the laboratory has it probably within minutes or seconds. And occasionally, if you have a challenging case, you can actually call the laboratory and say, hi, I just sent you an impression, take a look at it. And you can discuss it with the patient still in the chair, and then the lab can get working right on it. So what does that do? It saves 1 to 2 days immediately. They can get working on your case. And if it's a simple single crown, they can process that within the day and get it back to you within the day. So you may have a 2-day, 3-day turnaround. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And the laboratories, of course, similarly, have all sorts of, they're getting rid of models, they're getting rid of casting machines, all sorts of things like that. And there's a savings there. And most dental laboratories now, because of these savings, are charging us less for those, for example, full contour ceramic, full contour zirconia crowns. So this is a bonus for using the digital workflow. So when you buy a digital impression, you have 2 options. Every single impression. You can take a digital scan and send it to the laboratory, or every single system has a way to fabricate the restoration in the office. And we'll talk about the details on that in a second here. So even if you say, well, I'm not digital, I'm using fantastic results with my impression material, I send things to the lab, I get these zirconia crowns, they fit great. The lab makes you digital no matter what you want to do. So you take this impression and you send it to the laboratory, and they put it in a scanner in the laboratory. So they scan your impression. So if there's something off in the impression, there's a discrepancy there. So why not send them, if they're going to scan it anyway, just send them this original scan. There's nothing that can go wrong in that situation. And then they put it up on a computer screen and design your crown on a computer screen. And they hire kids to do this stuff. Kids who are very good at video games can do your crowns. They're sitting there in the laboratory and they're designing your crowns, and they push a couple of buttons and it sends it off to a milling center. And the milling center has a big block. It looks like a hockey puck. They call it it's kind of like a hockey puck. And they can mill out several crowns at a time, bridges, single units, all sorts of things in one block of zirconia. So that's a pretty interesting setup. And so you all are digital, whether you know it or not, if you're working with that system. I went to the largest lab I know about, which is Glidewell Dental Laboratories, and said, so how many impressions do you get? Do you get a lot of digital impressions? And this is a 3-year span. Every month they get more and more digital impressions. So that means they're becoming more digital in their workflow, changes the whole way the laboratory runs, gets rid of certain people. I hate to say it that way. And that's what's going on in the dental labs. I also said to the Glidewell people, I said, well, when someone sends an impression, are they just doing crowns? They said, oh, absolutely not. I mean, the majority are sending them in for their Glidewell happens to have Bruxeer, which is their zirconia, but a lot of people are sending in for splints and mouth appliances and sleep appliances and grinding appliances, night guards, things like that. And when you do that, if you take a full arch scan, you don't have a model to pour, you don't have an impression, and everything's nice and perfect. So when you get these cases back and you go to seat a night guard, it just seats. It seats perfectly. There's no discrepancy. There's no bubbles in the plaster. There's no little blebs, things like that. That's an amazing. But if you look at the chart there, it says EMAX, which is lithium bisilicate. You can do those. You can do full cast crowns, huh? You can do full cast crowns with a digital scan. You can do porcelain fused to metal, of course, because they have it digital. And if they want to use gold, they can just 3D print a model. It's some very sophisticated, very, very high-end 3D printers, not like the ones that we have in our offices. Tremendous accuracy down to microns, and then they go back into the regular workflow. So you can do anything you want with a digital impression. And when we've heard some of the other speakers speak about all on fours and all sorts of incredible implant cases, it's all done digitally. It all can be done digitally. And if you don't start it out digital, it ends up digital in the laboratory anyway, the fabrication of the things that they're doing. So let's get into the literally nuts and bolts here. So for starters, CEREC has been around since 1986, and everybody knows CEREC. They know CEREC. It actually stands for something. It stands for, excuse me, Chairside Economical Restoration of Aesthetic Ceramics. No, I bet you didn't know that. Some of the people from Sirona don't even know that. And so they've evolved and evolved and evolved. And they came up with this idea of doing one visit dentistry. And so many people said, oh, that's great. I can do crowns in my office. And we'll talk about that in a split second here. One of the things we found was that you start respecting enamel. And all of a sudden, when you have something like a CEREC, we'll use that as a generic term right now. I'll use CEREC as the generic term of one visit dentistry, although there's several others we'll talk about. You can do partial coverage restorations. You can leave a cusp. You can leave a wall. You can leave something up there. Number one, it's very, very easy to do. Number two, it's very easy to design with a computer, and it's very, very quick. So, because these are not zirconia. This is sort of composite type materials that are bonded back into the tooth. So why don't we do more of those now? Well, my personal problem is anytime I've done something like this, the temporaries are a nightmare. You put in some temporary and it breaks, it falls out. You're trying to overlay a cusp. It's a millimeter of plastic of some sort. So they come out. The second problem is that the patient has to come back because you end up cementing these things with Duralon and things like that. You have to anesthetize the patient again and bring the patient back. It's a whole big production. But if you have the patient in the chair and you make these partial coverage restorations, they're done. They walk out the door. And because part of the tooth is still there, the translucency and the light dynamics go through the tooth, the color match is very, very good. And you have to do a little bit of color matching, but you get really nice results like that. So let's look at the crown in the lower left corner. This is the crown. This was a crown try-in. Full crown, did the full crown. We tried the crown in, and then we showed, we had the patient test it out in buccal version and chewing on it and everything else. And said, okay, now we're going to go finish the crown. And the patient looked at the crown and said, what's wrong with the crown? Well, it doesn't match. They go, oh, I've always wanted a white tooth. Finally, I have a white tooth in my mouth that doesn't have all these stains and things. And we're going to torture ourselves and stain the gingival margin with D4 and put some occlusal grooves in there. So sometimes, we ended up we convinced the patient to stain and finish the case. But sometimes patients' expectations are far different than what we expect them to do. So, but there are special blocks that get very nice results, triple, tri color blocks, things like that. But again, think of what's going on. Look, this is certainly functional margins, contacts, occlusion. We're all fine with this whole thing. And then I've seen that this is something that came up. Somebody's posted this and sent it to me on the internet and said, you don't have to, you can redesign these cases in all sorts of weird ways now since you have this partial coverage possibility. So look at these preparations, quite different. They don't teach those in school. You just take what you have and you need to make some retention, although bonding is pretty good. I wouldn't depend on bonding 100%. But bonding is pretty good, and you can get some nice results just doing something like that. So let's move along. What did Sirona do? They came out last year with the Prime Scan, and the Prime Scan was, everybody said, wow, this is the greatest. Now, the question people come to me and say, Paul, I want to buy a digital impression system. What is the best system out there? The day this came out, that was probably the best system out there. Since it's come out, the other companies have gone ahead, or at least parallel. It's a horse race. It's like watching a horse race. So somebody's in the lead, some all watch each other. They all see what each other are doing. They all steal from each other. They have people sneaking around from company to company. So whenever you see something new in one company, you're going to see it again in some other company, which is great for us as on the end result. So I went to one of my experts on CEREC, who's Todd Ehrlich in Texas, and he had just gotten the Prime Scan. I said, so what's amazing about it? He said, well, let me show you a quick case. And here's a case where he took off some old porcelain fused to metal anterior crowns, reprepped the teeth for full ceramics, for full CEREC crowns. And look at that. Let's watch that cuspid for a second. And so he said, here's what happened, that the margin of that cuspid was very, very far subgingival. The reason there's a little arrow there is he sent me a video, so I took some screenshots. And with the Prime Scan, take a look at this. He has scanned all the way down into that 3+ millimeter sulcus and got a perfect scan all the way down there. So one of the beautiful things about the Prime Scan, and now the others also, is the depth of field that they can go through. So this is something to watch when you're looking at a scanner. If you're looking for a new scanner, say, how far down can you go into the sulcus? Can we do subgingival? Can it pick up margins? Can it pick up bevels? God forbid, bevels. What are those? The young students don't know anything about bevels anymore. And so my friends in Great Britain said, look what we're doing. We tried something. They scanned a patient's mouth with an implant. And they said, let's see if we can scan the internal of the implant. So this is still in process. So they scanned the implant and tried to pick up the threads, and they took the scan and they made a 3D print of it. And it was still, I don't have the answers just yet, but they were going to fabricate the process by a traditional system and see if it fit back on this model. And I think it's not impossible that someday we're going to get rid of all these special impression copings that we have to use for implants. Might be able to scan right into the implant. So we're on the way. We're on the way. What else does Sirona have? They have cone beam. And again, we've talked about guided surgery. Many of the lecturers spoke about guided surgery. This is how it all works. So if a company like Sirona has a complete system, so if you use their cone beam and their CEREC scan, the prime scan, everything can be merged together. This is how you develop all these processes. And I'll go into a detail on one little case later on, but this is what it's all about. So Sirona itself, Dentsply Sirona itself, has an all-in-one system. You want to pay the money and get all the pieces, you can have a complete integrated system right there. Who else is out there? Well, D4D came out in 2007, came to E4D, became PlanScan, and they were purchased by Planmeca, and now it's in the Planmeca scan system. So also a one visit dentistry system there. So they were able to do scanning, milling, designing all in one spot. They came out recently with the Emerald scanner, and that was the Planmeca Emerald, which is a very, very nice lightweight scanner. And what did Planmeca bring to the table? Planmeca has cone beam. So all of a sudden, Planmeca's Romexis software now takes the cone beam and takes the scan, merges them together, and now they are a fierce competitor head-to-head with Dentsply Sirona. So now we have two options, maybe more. We'll see in a few minutes. So if you're worried about keeping everything in one system, you can get one complete system, again, from Planmeca with that system there. Hold those thoughts, because we're going to go further. So again, for those of you who haven't seen it, this is the scan, and you can see the merging of the cone beam and the intraoral scan of the little picture over there. Planmeca also has done some other things recently. They came out with a new mill. It's pink, and it's a little less expensive because it uses one burr instead of two. It costs less money. So those of you who wanted to get involved and say, gee, I can't afford the whole system, you can get the smaller system. It's slower, but it still works very, very well. And Planmeca also came out with a 3D printer. So they're pushing this further. So now they have one of everything in there. Hold these thoughts, because we're going to keep pushing these things through. So where do I come in? How do I know all this stuff? There's this little school in Boston called MIT. Some of you might have heard of it. And some of the technology people there said they were going to make their own intraoral scanner, and they hired me to be the clinical director. So I was actually on the ground floor of developing a system from the ground up. It was called Bronte's Technologies. And we worked very, very hard. We did a lot of clinical studies, and we worked it, and I had the engineers at my fingertips and said, well, the margins weren't good, the contacts weren't good, this wasn't good, that wasn't good. And we evolved to a very, very good point. And then one day the founders of the company called me and said, Paul, we sold the company to somebody. I said, oh, who'd you sell it to? Oh, a little company called 3M. And 3M then took this whole process out of Massachusetts. They brought it out to Minneapolis and converted it to the Lava COS system, which some of you have seen. And the Lava COS system evolved into the 3M True Definition scanner. And the biggest problem that people said was, I'm not using that thing because it uses powder. And 3M studies show that if you use powder, you have much more accuracy. And you're sitting there scratching your head and saying, if I use powder, how in the world is that more accurate? I mean, I'm flooding powder. I mean, there has to be a discrepancy. That's not what powder looks like. This is what powder looks like. It's like, I call it fairy dust, pixie dust. You put there's a little device that they have that sprays it on very, very lightly, and there are tiny little white speckles all over the place. And the computer can see these little white speckles and have an exact spot there and use it as a reference point. So there's still, to this day, studies that show, even if you're using the other scanners, if you put a little bit of powder on the preparation, you're going to get a better scan. Also, sometimes there are bright gold restorations that are shining too much, so you can use the powder to dull those down too. So that's the powder. Of course, the goal is to get rid of the powder and still get the high definition. Well, 3M gave up. And they now sold the whole process to a mid-mark company. And I just have to show you this funny little thing. They were at one of the trade shows when the mid-mark took it over, and they had the scanner in the booth, and they had a piece of tape over the 3M logo in their booth. So they finally fixed it. Now it says mid-mark on it. So these are some of the things that I do. And that's me wandering around a dental meeting with my bag of tricks and asking questions. Again, that's why I'm here. An Israeli company called Cadent came out with something called the iTero many years ago. All they wanted to do was do impressions, a digital impression system. That's all they want to do. That's all they still want to do, digital impressions. And so they've been through some evolutions, and now it's called the iTero Element. And at some point they were purchased. They were bought by Align Technologies. You know Align? Align does Invisalign. And all of a sudden they merged their technologies, and so many orthodontists found that if they used the iTero scanner for the full arch cases and sent it out for Invisalign cases, the cases were fantastic. And it was a very, very quick turnaround, and the clin checks came back quicker. And one of the things that you'll think about, if any of you have done aligners therapy, is you take an impression and send it out to Align. And what Align does, they scan your impression and they build printed models and do all sorts of things. But when you take an impression right in the interproxils, right where the gingival crest comes in between the teeth, it's a little bit washed out. When you do a scan for a Invisalign type or a Invisalign type process, it's much tighter. The cases come in much tighter because they go right into that little crevice. So the cases fit tighter, the cases go better. So again, the accuracy is better for your impression. The cases are going to go better along the way with this type of a system. They've changed up. I have something on my screen blocking, but I don't think you do. That's the new iTero Element. And they also decided to go to a portable system called the Flex. So again, when you go out to look at these things, that's some of the new products that you're seeing. So a lot of these products are getting better and better, and there's very, very little difference between them. One might be a little faster, one might be a little sharper, the color might be a little bit better. At this point, they're all, as I have some more to show you, they're all excellent. But what each company is doing now is saying, what can we do to get the consumer dentist to buy our particular product? And they come up with very, very interesting software. So this one is from iTero. It's called Time Lapse. And what they allow you to do is take an image today and an image months from now, years from now, and it's overlaid and shows you if there's a discrepancy. In this case, there was some gingival abrasion. And the computer sees it immediately and it highlights it on the screen. If there are wear facets, if a patient's a bruxer and there are wear facets, it's going to show you the actual the sequential grinding of the patient over time. So this is a nice piece of software. Of course, they came out with this, everybody else copied them, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we're going to find. Then this company 3Shape appeared out of nowhere, we thought. Anybody who knows the laboratory business knows that 3Shape's been in the lab business forever. 3Shape is one of the top set of softwares that the labs use. So I said earlier, you send your scans to the lab, and the lab uses some design software to make your crowns or bridges or whatever it's making. And most of them are using 3Shape software. It's absolutely spectacular software. So the people at 3Shape said, well, let's go directly to the dentists, and came out with a little scanner years ago that looked like this. It was called the Trios, had a kind of an interesting looking arm. And they've evolved it to a component option like this. And they look very carefully at what everybody else is doing. And they said, you know what, we should do color, because Sirona's doing color with the new, I forget which one it was at the time. So we're going to do color. And then everybody started copying them and said, okay, we're all doing color. So 3Shape said, let's go further. Let's go beyond color. If we're doing color, let's take shade matching. Let's do shade matching. And why don't we go into HD mode? So the 3Shape scanners started doing shade matching, direct shade matching, high definition. And the other companies had to do a lot of scrambling around, which is what PrimeScan actually did, to catch up with the HD over there. And again, this is that horse race. So again, if you said, I'll be redundant, which one is better? I don't know. Today, this looks pretty good to me. Well, 3Shape keeps pushing the limits. And in 2017, they said, we're going to get rid of the wire. We're going to have a wireless system. A wireless system. Wow. Who needs that? Well, when you use it in your hand, it's the most ergonomic thing you've ever used. It's just like holding a little wand. You move it around, and you can move from room to room. And it's not hardwired to anything. It's really nice. And you also have some features of the scanner itself. You can use it as a mouse and a clicker and do some other things with it. So keep an eye on that. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. At least as far as I know today, they're still the only ones with a wireless system. But so it's not connected to a box. It's not connected to a monitor. What do you do? So they came up with this nice little monitor called the, I can't even see my own screen here, but they came up with a new monitor that has an articulated arm and a, oh, I can fix this. Let me fix something here for a second. Ah, there we go. There was something wrong. Now I can't see myself. Oh boy, I thought I was a technology guy. All right, I'm back in. Anyway, has an articulated arm And you can move this around. It has little wheels. You can move it around. And again, it's wireless, so it doesn't matter where it goes. You can position that monitor right over the patient's face and look at them. Hold that thought, because I have something very slick to show you later on. So it's a very expensive system. And dentists said, boy, I'd love to have the 3Shape system and all that, but boy, you know, it's a little bit more than this one, a little bit more than that one. And cost does come into play, although, you know, there's always a way to, you know, there's always a return on investment. So 3Shape says, I'll tell you what, we'll sell you the basic system. It's not wireless, it's wired, but it has the same scanning capabilities. It just doesn't have all the bells and whistles, all the fancy software. And later on, you can add these to it. So they have different basic systems. And now the other companies also are coming out with basic systems. One of them, I can't remember which one, even sells a black and white non-color system for a much lower price, but you're still getting the same overall system. And you always have the option to move up and do the improvements to get to the higher levels. Okay. Plan Mecca, Sirona, Align Technologies, 3Shape. Are we done? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We're not done yet. Carestream came in big time with the 3600 a couple of years ago, and I've spent a lot of time working with Carestream on this one, and the scans were impeccable, HD quality, beautiful, beautiful ideas. And then they recently did something the end of last year, which I'm going to smirk, and they're going to yell at me for this, but I think it's funny. They introduced their new 3700, and I want you all to go, ooh, isn't that beautiful? It really has a beautiful design. Why am I saying that? Don't shoot me, Carestream. It was designed by the Porsche company. They hired the Porsche company to design this sleek-looking, nice piece of equipment. And it is. It feels great in your hands. It's ergonomically balanced. It's really, really nice. And I'm sorry, I have to have some fun with what I do here. But it's absolutely great. It's lightning fast, absolutely accurate. So I'm going to use the Carestream system to show you a few details that which go across the board. So again, what does Carestream have? Carestream sells cone beams. So again, one-stop shopping. So you can get the cone beam system from Carestream. You can get the scanner from Carestream. You can do all the integration with their excuse me, the software called PDIP, prosthetic driven implants planning. Everybody has little words that they use. They have a wonderful new cone beam, by the way. I have to mention this, that instead of using the little laser beams to put the patient's head in there, they use little video screens. It's quite different. They still use some of the lasers for marking, but the main looking is using this little monitor, and it's very, very different, very, very cool thing. So just if you're looking at the cone beams, again, I'm not partial to this particular one, but this is unique in this little setup that they have over there. And so what Carestream do, so they have their own software called CS ScanFlow, and it allows you from one screen to do all your design work and do everything you need to do. And again, they're just trying to give you easy software. And they also have color matching, and they have to have a fancy name, so they call it BRDF, Bidirectional Reflectance Distribution Function. Why can't they just call it color matching? But it's really good. It's really good. So again, value added. Why would you buy this one over something else? Well, they have this. 3Shape has that. Sirona has this. Plan Mecca has that. So that's what it's all about. And again, they have an interesting little piece of software that as soon as you take your scan, it looks at your preps and says, oh, you have some undercuts over here. Everyone does the same thing. They do it a different way. So this is just an example of rechecking your preparations before you take your final scan. And I should hold this for a second. So let's say you've done your scan and you think you're all finished and you've taken your final impression. And if you took your final impression and then saw this later on, say, oh boy, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to re-prep the tooth, take a new impression. If you have a digital scan, you can go back to that preparation, change the prep a little bit. You go to your scan, there's a digital eraser. You can erase out the prep, rescan what you just did, and pop it right back in. 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and you're back in business. How many times have you done a crown, single crown, or two crowns, or a temporary bridge? And you've done your case, you've all taken the impressions all wrapped up, ready to go to the laboratory, and you're working on your temps, and all of a sudden, you're going through the temp, and you didn't realize that the patient goes into some strange buccolingual excursion, and you didn't account for it. So you say, oh, I already took my impression. What am I going to call the lab and say, hey, do me a favor, spot the opposing, or send me a reduction coping. With the digital impression, say, hold on a second. You go back to the case, you go back to the patient's mouth. They're still in your chair, you're still making the temp. Reduce a little bit on the occlusal, erase that tooth from the scan, rescan that little section, and you're back up and running, and you don't have to deal with all those things. And many of the pieces of software are actually give you an alert anyway before you take the final scan. You don't have enough room for this or that, whatever material you're using. So again, there's a little bit of a learning curve. And again, I'm just using Caries as a simple example here of what we talked about merging the scans with the cone beam. So here on the left is a scan. Here on the right is here on the left is the cone beam. Here on the right is the scan. And with the software, you push a button and it pops them together. So now you have the overlay just like that. And you want to place an implant in this area here. So you've heard a lot of the practitioners tell you about guided surgery. So you're sitting here, but you can also determine where the tooth goes before you even start. So you say, I'm going to put the tooth where it's supposed to be, and let's see if there's enough bone, buccal lingual width. Do I have to do anything? And you can do all of your design from this screen. And you take the software and you figure out where you want your crown to be, and you can go from crown down instead of implant up and design the implant. And if that's the ideal if that's the ideal position, but you say, gee, the bone is insufficient, then you have to either reposition that implant or go into some of the fabulous surgery that you've been seeing from some of the other practitioners here. To take an impression, you put a special coping on there. It's called a scan body. You take an impression. The scan body actually has a lot of information on it. So the computer actually sees little notches and scratches and things on that, and it knows exactly that is a Straumann, whatever size, this, that, and the other thing, and goes into the software build. Caries just recently introduced the CS3100 milling system, so now they have the full system out there. It was made by Aman Gerbach, but they specified it for Caries. So again, a full system with cone beam from Caries. So a lot of players there. Glidewell Laboratories didn't want to sit by, and they said, well, we don't have everything here, but we made our own mill. So Glidewell made their own mill and said, we're going to take our mill and our design software that we use in the dental lab and tag team it with the iTero element and sell you a complete system. So Glidewell now has a complete system called the IO system, and you buy it as a package, and you can have a one visit dentistry system from this also. So that's what's going on. The other thing that Glidewell does, they make their own materials. So they have a fully sintered zirconia. They have a temporary material. They have lithium disilicate, actually it's lithium silicate material, a composite material. One of the things about the Glidewell mill and the Glidewell zirconia is it's already pre-sintered. So when you mill it, it takes a little bit longer to mill this, but when it's finished, it's finished. You don't have to run it back in the oven. So that's a little interesting feature of the Glidewell. So again, as you're looking to buy these different systems, ask a lot of questions. Is it pre-sintered? Can you use pre-sintered zirconia? How long does it take to mill it? How long is it going to be taking to process it in the oven and stain it and glaze it and everything else? Things you really need to know. And more. We'll keep going. I still have time. GC Corporation has a very, very simple system. It's a very lightweight system. It's brand new. They're still working on it. It's out for sale. It's not very expensive in comparison to the other systems out there. I would call it at this time, and GC sort of says the same thing. If you want to come in on the bottom rung, it's a good scanner. It does what it's supposed to do. I've had a chance to work with it a little bit in the meetings, not in anybody's mouth, and it works pretty well. And they will evolve as you evolve. Now here's the problem. I did the scan in the meeting. I was, wow, it looked great. How do I know if it's accurate? How many cases have these guys done? I'm not picking on them specifically, but when you're looking at a new system, you have one system here that's done millions and millions of restoration, one that's done a few hundred restorations. So if you want to be, if you trust the company and say, okay, let's give it a chance and see how it goes, that's fine as long as there's a money back guarantee. So, but these are the things that be early adopters when we first came in to see how many units have they really done. Then there's a company called Medit. They were in the laboratory business. They may have a laboratory scanner, and they said, we're coming into the business of the dentists again. They came up with a nice little scanner here. And a friend of mine, Armin Merzian out in California, has really taken this thing to its limits. And these are some of the scans he's been doing with the Medit. It's very, very cost effective. I'll just say that. I don't want to give out pricing over the internet here, but it's a lot less. It's significantly less expensive than some of the other ones. And according to Armin and his friends and the people at Medit, the results are fantastic. And again, I don't have thousands and thousands of cases to show you, but they're getting many, many more users. So again, take a look at Medit if you're looking at something in this, purchasing a new scanner. Another company is called 3Disc, not to be confused with 3Shape. And they have a scanner called the Heron. I just saw this in Chicago at the Chicago Midwinter, and it looked very good on the meeting floor. How has it worked in my office? Not yet. I don't have a clue. I'll have a chance to take some of these into the office and report on them in the articles that I write. But right now, all I know is it's a nice scanner. It felt well. It looked good, and it was fast. It looked good at the dental meeting. So we have a lot of questions. Lots more coming. I want to say stop for a split second. When those of you who are scanning know that retraction is kind of an issue sometimes, that you have to get to the upper second molars and go push out the cheek to get to the buccal of the upper second molars, or push the tongue out of the way. And we tend to use metal retractors, mirrors, things like that. Very enterprising dental assistant from Massachusetts, where I am, by the way, invented this thing called the ScanMate. And the ScanMate is a retractor, but it's autoclavable, but the little black top of there is it's stiff, but it's soft and moves. So you can actually push things out of your way very, very nicely. It's gotten very, very good reviews as a little adjunct to use. And Carestream Dental just recently picked that up as one of their lines of things that they sell or incorporate. And this is, I have to say, thank you, Sherry, for inventing this thing. This is an entrepreneurial person. And this dentistry is full of people who have great ideas and great inventions. And she has taken this and pursued and knocked on everybody's door and actually got a product to market. Plenty of you have great ideas. You should get a hold of Sherry if you want to know how much effort it takes to get something into the marketplace. But I applaud her for doing something like this. And again, there are probably other products out there, but everybody really seems to like this for the scanning. So to add to some confusion, when I went to Cologne last year, the company said, by the way, we'll be introducing new features, not faster, not better, new features. And all of them, anybody who has not gone to the IDS show, and this makes me cringe a little bit because I hope this continues. But this is a show every 2 years in Germany, in Cologne, Germany. About 160,000 people show up at this show. And this was just the line to get into the place. I have a Fitbit. I do about 20,000 steps to get through the 5 or 6 buildings just to see everything that I have to see. It takes me 3 to 4 days to get through it and see all the products, which I'm talking to you about right now. So the IDS show at this moment is scheduled for March 9th to 13th, 2021. I hope that we're clear by then to get this back in business. This is just an amazing show. It's very important for the dental industry because this is B2B. A lot of the companies know not much, very little CE of this. It's all about equipment, materials, companies talking to companies, making deals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Most important meeting for me every 2 years. So I hope it continues next year. So what these companies did, 3Shape, iTero, and Planmeca said, we're going to do an added value. And we will now do caries detection on our system. So you have an option, a little optional tip that you can put on some of the units, and you can see caries detection using transillumination, infrared, things like that, similar to the DEXIS Care View, that if any of you've seen that, built into these systems. And again, you'll have all this all in one. So these are some of the things that are coming out there. The crystal ball is very interesting. This Voco Corporation is working very hard to get this to market. They have developed a scanner that actually can see through 2 millimeters of gingiva. And they have some prototypes that work. Again, I've only seen them on the bench. If this goes, we will eliminate retraction. And of course, if this goes, everybody will copy them. I don't know how patents work particularly, but you can bet that every single company will figure this out. And I'm sure they're all working on something similar to this, but they've been showing this at the IDS, saying we have a new solution. So keep your eyes open. Don't sit back and wait and say, oh, I'm going to wait to get a scan until they have the no retraction system. And again, think of this for implants and looking through the tissue to see the top of the implant and the bone and everything else. So who knows? Who knows? This looks pretty interesting. One very, very interesting thing I saw at the IDS show was this virtual reality. It was a pair of virtual reality glasses, and you would scan your patient. This was a model specifically, and it hangs a hologram out in front of your eyes. So as I'm not looking at a screen, I'm looking straight ahead of me, and right above the teeth that I'm scanning is a little hologram of my scan. So this particular company is Epson virtual reality glasses. It was called iCAD Connect. There are several others in the marketplace. Again, these are the cool things that I get to see when I run around the dental meetings. Now, some of you are sitting saying, well, I still think my impressions are just as good and I don't really have to be digital. And I get it that, my stuff will be scanned. Is there an in-between? Yeah, there is. You can buy your own impression scanner. This is one particular one from Colzer Corporation. So you can buy a scanner yourself. So you can still take your impressions, still take your triple trays, whatever you want to take. You put them in this machine, you push a couple of buttons, some flashing lights and lasers go on, and it gives you an STL file that you can now send right to the dental lab, and you immediately into the system there. So this is a small step. It's probably, I'd say they're probably in the $7,000 to $8,000 range as far as I know. I don't like to give pricing, but just to get a sense of what you're looking at in that over there. I'm going to run out of time, so let me keep going quick. So if you have one of the systems and it wasn't the complete system, like the Cerex system, like the Planmeca system, like the Castrium system, 3Shape, for example, doesn't have a mill, at least as of right now. What if you have a 3Shape, say, I like the mill in my own office? Buy one. You can get a mill. There are many, many companies that make mills. And this is one particular company I like for a certain funny reason. It's Roland Company. For my musician friends out there, you know Roland, they make keyboards. And they also have a whole dental and medical division too. So this is a very small little, it was called a dry mill, very small, compact. It could fit right in your office and do certain types of materials that don't require water. It was it was under $20,000 if I recall. And they also have a nice wet mill. So you could actually buy the Roland mill in your office and connect it to your scanner. It's not that simple. That's why the integrated systems seem to make a little more sense. You have to be a player to do this. You have to figure out, it's not like buying an old stereo system where you bought a Sony front end and a Pioneer Pioneer receiver and somebody else's speakers, Bose speakers or something, and just plug them all together. That's not how it works. You have to have a little bit of integration going on with software, design software, but it can be done. You have to be a little bit of a player to do it, but you can do it. So think about these things. You can buy just a scanner, and then later on add the mill to your system. So let's real quickly shoot through a couple of mills. This is a nice man. We mentioned his name before. His name happens to be Jim Glidewell, a wonderful man, a visionary in dentistry. And as I said earlier, he has a mill, and this mill is designed from the original mills that they use at the Glidewell laboratory. Much smaller, of course. Very, very quick. So you could buy Mr. Glidewell's mill, and as I said before, he'd be glad to stitch it together with this design software. I have to say something about the software. It's kind of interesting. Many of us watch TV shows and they're police, and they find somebody and they have facial recognition, or they have fingerprints, and there's a screen of this. So when they're sitting in the police station, you see a million fingerprints flying through the screen. That's how this works. Glidewell has done thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of different crowns, and they have a library of them in this software. So when you do a preparation, it goes and finds the closest match to the prep that you've done and designs the crown based on that, and then does some tweaking to it to match it to your exact specifications. I have to say, from a technology standpoint, it's just wonderful. This is what I live for. Ivoclar Vivident came out with the program Mill 1. They introduced it a couple of years ago, and before it got to marketplace, they realized there was some error in something wasn't working quite right. So rather than have it go to the dentist and have to repair them all, they said, we're going to take it off the market, rebuild it, redo it, and it's back again. Look at this thing. It's just a little circular thing, a little cylindrical thing. There's a plug in it. There's no on. It's just an on-off switch. There's nothing you have to do. It works all with wireless and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. I don't even know how it works. And you can get it in the office and just connect it to any of the other systems. 3Shape right now is working with them directly, so they have a system with the 3Shape scanner and the Ivoclar program mill. So again, if you're looking at system, milling system, there are many possibilities. A company called VHF has a scanner that can go in your office, and this one can actually mill titanium. So it's a little more robust, but you can start doing your own titanium abutments if you feel like designing and doing them in your office. Interesting stuff out there. Axis Corporation is another one. I won't spend a lot of time on these, but that's another very, very good company. And Amann Girrbach, which is a giant company internationally, has mills in probably every single laboratory. They now have a small mill that goes into your own office too. And again, it's just another option. And I believe Henry Schein Company in the United States is using these and integrating them with some of their other products that they're selling there too. So the in-between piece is this design program. So I showed you Glidewell's program, but you can buy your own design program, or some of them are integrated directly. Like ExoCAD, for example, is sometimes integrated inside of the mill, just like Intel is inside of your computer. ExoCAD is sometimes in the mill, and 3Shape is the design program that the laboratories use. So they do have home versions, I'll call it for lack of a better word, an in-office version. So ExoCAD has chairside, ExoCAD chairside. They just, incidentally, they were just purchased by Align about, actually right before all this happened, right, about a month ago. I haven't had a chance to find out what that's all about, but great piece of software. I think you can license it somehow. So again, if you're talking to a company and say, how does this work? A lot of times they'll say, well, we'll integrate your scanner and your mill, and we're using ExoCAD as the design program. It's out there. So some of us don't want to do all this stuff. I want to just do my preps. I would love to just do my preps and then push a button and close my eyes and have the the restoration design. Well, you can. There are some companies out there that are doing it for you. This is a company called Full Contour. They work mostly with laboratories. They'll start to work with dentists shortly, where you design you do your prep, and you send it to them digitally. They design the crown and send it back to your mill directly. And I think that Planmeca does that to some extent also. So you can there's a fee for it, but if you're lazy, say, here's my prep, push a button, have them do it. This is a very funny ad that I found from a company called Royal Dental Laboratory at ChinaDental.com. It says, we design while you sleep. So you send them your case. You say, this is what I want. I want this partial frame. I want this implant setup. I want these abutments, whatever. And you submit it says here, submit your STL files when you get off work. And when you come into your office the next day, it's all designed. So there's just something else that you can see and do. And again, as I said before, there's bundles. So you can have the companies sit down with you and say, okay, I want this impression scanner. Then I want this design software. I want this mill. And these days, you might even want a 3D printer. So as you're looking at all these things, think about what you want to do here. I'm pretty much out of time. I just wanted to give you two quick things, and then we'll sign off. I mentioned 3D printing, and many of you use it, but I have to show you something I saw at the IDS show. There's a company at the IDS show that said, we can print zirconia crowns. I said, how are you going to do that? They said, watch. I didn't watch them do it. They said, here we go. It's a company called Lithos. And this is a zirconia crown, 3D printed. I said, that's unbelievable. I said, well, there's a little bit of a problem. The printer cost $350,000, and it took us 22 hours to print this thing. But we can do it. Proof of concept. One more thing that's going to blow your mind. Big game changers on its way. Big game changer for dentistry. In the back rooms of the IDS, where I'm allowed to see things that people can't get to see, I saw something called direct printed clear aligners. What does this mean? That there's some 3D printers and some materials out now that can directly print the aligners. One from France on the left side, one from Korea on the right side, and actually Visit Dentistry in the middle. And these were the prototypes that I saw a year ago, and I've been told that they're pretty much ready to go to market. You know the process here. You send your cases to Align, Invisalign, other places, Clear Correct, whoever else it is. They print models, and they have a suck down machine to make these. What if you could have the software and print your own aligners directly in the office? Mind blowing, lots to think about. So my time check tells me that it's time to leave. So let me just go back to, too bad we're missing all this cool stuff here. So my contact information is drpaul@toothfairy.com. I'll be posting a lot of information as fast as I get it onto my Facebook page and on Twitter at Dr. Paul F. And there was a little tweak there about virtual articulation. If anyone wants to know about that, you'll have to email me, or we'll have to come back for more. Thank you very, very much for this. This is enlightening. What a break from what I've been doing all day long. Thanks so much, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, sir. It was really informative and a wonderful session. And it was very technology oriented. So it seems everybody is appreciating your presence. And we have few questions with us.
Sure.
Dr. Parat Sarthi, he asked, please guide, I want to start a lab with CBCT, intraoral scanner, 3D printing, guide for implant placement. What else is needed?
Education.
Okay. Great.
I'm serious that you can get all these components and have them all working together, but you have to learn, and that's what some of the clinicians that we're seeing in this global lecture series are showing you how they're doing this. How are we designing crowns? How are we designing implants? How are we designing the cases? So the infrastructure, the mechanical, so that's my end of this is the mechanical side. I'm the machine side of everything, but we need the clinicians to show us how it all works. So, and then again, it depends on if you want to get a one solid integrated system from, for example, everything from Dentsply Sirona, or if you want to pick and choose different components and set it up together. So that's sort of a off the cuff answer to that. It's not a great answer, but it's an answer.
So, and he also asked, how much will be investment?
Um,
in
I
India?
would say a minimum of and something like that for a good, very good cone beam and a very good scanner, you're probably in the $200,000 US range easily. I mean, scanners range anywhere from, I'll give some numbers, anywhere from 15,000 to 50,000. Cone beams go anywhere from 60,000 to 100 plus thousand. So, and the software is not expensive. It just sort of sits in the middle there, a few $1,000s here and there. But
Okay.
so that's the and the mills will run. Mills can be expensive. The actual mills can run anywhere from about 15,000 up to maybe 50 or $60,000. So again, you have to pick and choose the particular components that you want, and each mill does something slightly different. So there's a lot. That's a lot. There's a lot of work, and that's again, I offer my services, drpaul@toothfairy.com. I have nothing better to do right now, so I'll encourage everybody to send me questions. I'll be glad to answer these questions specifically.
Okay. So one more question by Dr. Parath. He asked, can we also print veneers, full mouth ceramic or zirconia, autologous root zirconium plant using
No,
scanner and 3D printing?
you cannot right now. We cannot print any type of permanent veneer or permanent crown. We can print crowns. They're mostly a composite-based crown, and we're working right now of printing crowns and veneers on a material that can then go into an oven and be baked. But the process is very tedious, to be honest with you, and it's just not ready. So temporaries, long-term temporaries are great. Anything acrylic, dentures right now are big. We can print dentures now, and that's going to change the entire denture industry. You can do some printing. The problem is some of these things have to be reinforced. So when we see some of the implant lectures, they're using a metal reinforcement inside the denture. You can't actually print the metal. I mean, you probably could, the metal framework and then the denture. So it's not that straightforward. But for complete denture, can you print the veneer? Technically, yes, but it's at this minute it's not worth it. It's really not worth it.
All right. Next question is, what is the driving force for the practitioners to use these latest technologies? Because many practitioners are still not using it.
The laboratories are going to push us. The laboratories are really going to be the push because they don't want to see impressions anymore. They don't want to see plaster anymore. So more and more laboratories are becoming 100% digital. And so whatever you send them is going to turn into a digital system. And again, as I said earlier at the beginning, the results are far better. I know that we have some great clinicians here and they're using fantastic impression materials and getting great results and the models are great. But if you want to use the newer materials that are coming out daily, you really have to be in the digital workflow. So I think the push is going to be coming from the laboratory side more than anything else. And again, if you want to do in-office dentistry, which is going to be very helpful, especially now where we want to eliminate extra visits, I think it's important. I think it's important.
Okay, we end with the questions now. So thank you for taking out the time to speak to us today on this very interesting topic. And it was really a great session full of energy. And hosting this session was wonderful, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having this, and thanks to everybody who set this up. And I'm going to be continuing to get my own education as I watch more of these processes over the next few weeks too. So thanks for everything you're doing. Everybody, please stay safe. And I'm home. I'm home all the time. So you can, again, email me, drpaul@toothfairy.com. I'll get right back to you. I'm sitting right here, right now. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you. So we'll be back with the next session in few minutes. For more information regarding certificate registration, speaker schedule, visit the links in the description box. Till then, stay tuned, stay safe. Thank you. Okay, sir. So we'll be ending with the meeting.
Okay.